There we go. Hi, Amir. Jeff Anderson here.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Good to meet you.
Good meeting you. Good seeing everybody.
Right. Yeah. Amir, I think your church circulated this. Plymouth. Do you go to Plymouth? No, somebody from Plymouth did. I thought it was you, but
No, not me. Plymouth, I'm not familiar.
okay, someone did. That's good. Yeah. Great.
I didn't have a chance to amplify it too much on my channels, but I certainly will, given that it's recording live on Facebook.
Absolutely.
Yes, we are live.
Should we start, Sarah, or?
Yes, we don't have John Cheeks yet, but I will let everyone else in, and then when he arrives, then we'll get him up in the main grid.
Okay, great.
Hope Natalia's not driving any longer.
I just parked. So I'm safe now.
Okay.
As I said, I'm in North Carolina for the furniture market, so it's been a busy week.
Okay.
Where in North Carolina are you?
High Point.
All right, you're in my neck of the woods. I went to Wake Forest at Winston-Salem.
Actually, my friend David Fouché lives in right near there, and I stayed with him from high school and junior high with on Sunday, and then left Tuesday morning to come here.
Nice. It's a great place.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so whenever everyone's ready.
Okay. Well, I'll start it. I'll kick it off. Should I go, or do you need to center me, or just go? Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Wilcox. I'm a member of the DC Statehood Green Party, as you see behind me. But we're here tonight for an independent DC election debate for civil discourse. This debate is planned independently. It's a production of all who are participating, and the objective is civil discourse beyond party. I'm going to briefly introduce our two moderators, and they will take it from there and introduce the candidates and lead you through the conversation. First, we have Lisa D.T. Rice, who's an independent political strategist who works nationally with various organizations. And we also have Jeffrey Anderson, who's a longtime journalist and founder of the District Dig in 2016. So thank you, and thank you to our tech team. And Jeffrey and Lisa, take it away. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank the group for inviting me to moderate this and welcome the candidates to this forum. I grew up in the area, and Delegate Holmes Norton has been a household name for a long time. So I'm looking forward to learning a little more tonight about what she does and has done and what you all would plan to do. I'll hand it over to Lisa to lay out some ground rules, and we'll get started.
Hi, thanks, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad everybody could be here. I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say. I have just a couple of ground rules, and the first and most important one is about our decorum while we're here. Each candidate is expected to deal honorably with the moderators and the other candidates. Indecent language is prohibited. The mics for candidates will remain muted until it's your turn to talk. And for the moderators, both of our mics will be open unless a candidate is speaking. We're also streaming this live on DC Civil Discourse Facebook page, and participants on Zoom and participants on Facebook, please send your questions in. If you're on Zoom, use the chat function, and Facebook, use the live Facebook feed. And I think with that, I can hand it over to Jeff. No? Jeff?
Okay, so we are going to do a Q&A. Let me explain what we're going to do. It's a Q&A. Each candidate will have 1 minute, and we will circle back around for the 1 minute rebuttal or response or addendum to the discussion. There will be 4 questions, and Lisa and I will alternate the questions. And when it's over, we will take questions from the audience that are being sent to our production crew here, and we will allow you 60 seconds to, well, we will ask you to limit your response to audience questions to 60 seconds. And I think that's the basic format.
Opening statements?
Who would like to go first?
Each candidate has 2 minutes to deliver an opening statement. Mr. Musa, would you start?
Yes. How are you, Lisa?
Good, thank you.
Yes, I am the candidate of the Socialist Workers Party here for DC delegate. I've lived on and off in Washington, DC for quite a while. We have a very clear program that we offer to the working people of the city and the country to get us out of this pandemic and out of this crisis that working people are confronted with around the economic and moral and political questions. And hopefully we'll be able to get through that during the course of the discussion. I just wanted to raise one little thing up. This is our newspaper, The Militant. We urge everyone to get a copy, and I'll urge you how to get one.
Okay. Mr. Stracuzzi, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
No, you said it correctly. My name is Natalia Lino Stracuzzi. I'm a first-generation Italian-American. I'm running for the Statehood Green Party for delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. James Wright from the Afro said I'm a perennial because of the fact that I keep running every election. I will keep running until they remand the fact we work till 70. If you look at the average person that dies that has wealth on TV, 7 out of 10 die before they get to 80. You have 2 out of those 10 that live to their into their 80s, and maybe 1 that lives close to 100 or over 100. I'm sorry, they want us to croak and keep our money. The working class supports the world. And it's about time that we start standing up for our rights. Our government should dictate to us that we have to work till 70. If you look at the president of France, he ran, they voted, had to work till 62. They voted him out of office. Are we stupid as Americans? Let's be realistic. Trade people cannot work at those type of ages. And even a blue collar worker, you start to slow down as you get older. We have to be more civil in this country. I always say America is a great country. It's the only country you can be a somebody to nobody overnight, and that's what I'm praying for. What's not great about America is we always take from the 2 most important people in our life. And who are those? Our children, the people going to bring us to where we're going, and then the elderly, the people that brought us to where we're at. And that's when we need to become more humane as a nation. We need statehood for the District of Columbia because we have no rights. We preach democracy around the world, but we deny the citizens of the District of Columbia equal rights when it comes to statehood. I always say, God bless America, but I will not God bless these United States until we get inducted into our union on equal footing. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Lowry?
Yes. Excuse me, you caught me a little off guard there because
Do you want someone else to go?
nope, I am totally ready. I just saw Mr. Krukoff raising his hand there. So,
Sorry, Dave.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Amir Lowry. Hola a todos, me llamo Amir Lowry. I'll address the people of the district in English and Spanish with my opening statement here. First, I want to address also the elephant in the room, or that's not in the room, and that is Congresswoman Noreen. I think the most important piece of this election, and we know how critical this election is an ability to be solution-oriented, to find the right solutions, not just you know, broad blanket solutions, but community driven, you know, on the ground, working with community leaders, those type of solutions. And to be blunt and honest, there's been a failure by our representation to address the needs of the city. And I'm putting myself forward to do much better than what's been offered to us thus far. I will close that bit by saying that her failure to engage me personally and this broader forum is the ultimate failure, I think, in what we're all trying to achieve, which is civic discourse. Statehood is an incredibly important priority for all of us here in the district. We need equal rights and we need equal representation. We've established that, and we know that that's a clear stated goal for all of us as a city. And that is my primary goal for us, is to get equal rights and equal representation in the form of statehood or not. I'm not accepting donations. I've accepted $0 from anybody. I think, quite frankly, it's irresponsible, the amount of money that's been raised during a pandemic for signs, for ads, for any range of things that aren't helping on the ground people that we as public servants, or posturing to be public servants, should be helping those people who need it the most and not directing those dollars towards ad space. So I think there needs to be a cultural shift. I'm big on my community-driven campaign, and I'll leave it at that. I want to address a little bit in Spanish. I don't know how much time I've taken. Quiero decir a la gente de Washington, D.C., me llamo Amir Lowry. Estoy súper emocionado de estar con ustedes y de ser postulando por Congreso en Washington, D.C. Yo he crecido aquí, amo a mi ciudad, amo a mi comunidad y deseo lo mejor para todos. No solo algunos, pero para todos. Y in English and Spanish, nobody has spoken to the Latino community in DC, from the mayor to the council to our congressional representation. That has to change. I'm willing to do that. Yo estoy postulando para hablar con ustedes. Quiero lo mejor para Washington, D.C. y por eso estoy. Gracias por dejarme hablar. Thank you for letting me speak here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Krukoff.
Hi, my name is David Krukoff. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and I'm looking forward to debating with everyone. I want to parrot what Amir just said. It's a shame that the 30-year incumbent, 15-term incumbent is not with us. I'll briefly discuss our campaign. We have a very purple campaign. The thesis of our campaign is that there is no better platform from which to espouse reform than the non-voting delegate position of the District of Columbia, provided that the person in that office is not affiliated with the Republicans nor the Democrats. Our campaign is the Purple New Deal. I invite you to join us on this path forward for the district and for the nation as a whole.
And is that where you end?
I think so. I think that we'll get more into the policy as we progress, but I look forward to interacting with everyone tonight and potentially scolding those that aren't here. But for the most part, to listen and to build rapport with those in the District of Columbia. Muchas gracias.
Okay. Great. Jeff has the first question.
Okay, so Delegate Holmes Norton is, like I said, a household word, and we know that she's been a staunch advocate for statehood. We know that she handles constituent services, particularly with the parks. We know that she has been a fierce defender of the district when we've had assaults on our autonomy from members of Congress. But my question, Mr. Musa, start with you. What is the job of the delegate? What is the job, the day-to-day job, and how do you envision it, and how do you envision doing it?
Well, thanks, Jeff. What we propose is a program for working people to organize ourselves in the district. There are millions of people unemployed in the United States. More unemployment is coming, yet the government, federal, state, local, has no program to give us jobs. So we propose that there be a mass public works program financed by the government at union scale wages to provide jobs for everybody who is unemployed, and at the same time, a sliding scale of wages so that when the expenses of working people go up, our salaries go up as well. That's one of the things that we raise. The other thing we raise in the campaign is that we all need a union in the places where we work to defend ourselves, our safety and the conditions of work as well as our wages. And we raise that we working people have to organize ourselves to actually do that by organizing unions in our workplace and fighting around safety questions, in particular on the job. Finally, the other thing we raise is that in order to organize much of this, we need to have a party of the working people, a labor party. We call upon the labor movement in the United States to actually organize a party independent of the Democrats and Republicans and any hangers on they may have to fight in the interests of working people from international policy to local policy. Just one final thing on the question of statehood. We're in favor of statehood and representation of all the people that live in the district, but there are 50 states, and that hasn't solved the problem of the people who live in the other 50 states. Even though we're for it, our program applies to all 50 states and includes the District of Columbia as well. So that is what we try to organize around. We're not saying vote for Omari Musa because he can solve your problem. That's not true. What we need is a mass movement like the civil rights movement, the movement against the war in Vietnam, the movement to defend women's rights of millions and millions to fight in the interests of working people against the capitalists who run everything and make us seem like the deplorables.
Okay, you went a little over time, Jeff. Sorry, you can call your
Okay, candidate Krukoff, same question. How do you perceive the job, the day-to-day job of being the elected delegate to Congress? What does the job mean to you? What do you do?
Okay, so the number one objective of the non-voting delegate position from the District of Columbia is to provide the constituents, her or his constituents, with complete voting rights. After 15 terms, 30 years, we can clearly say that Eleanor Holmes Norton has failed in that objective. Our approach will be to solve that problem for once and for all. As many of you know, I am the leader of the retrocessionists. I am the creator of Douglas County, Maryland. And after I created, along with a couple other people, Douglas County, Maryland as a branding of the district in the future, all of a sudden DC was changed from, in the future, being from New Columbia to Douglas Commonwealth. So we can talk until we're blue in the face and not have results, or we can work with our neighbors and we can have results. And we can do this through political reform. Douglas County, Maryland is one reform. We can have multi-member districts. We can have more ranked choice voting. We can have open primaries. I'm a member of the National Association of Nonpartisan Reformers. We look to transform Congress from within. The modus operandi of Eleanor Holmes Norton has not yielded results. It is not time for us to scold Senate Republicans. It's time for us to have coffee with them. So we have a different approach. We look to unify. We look to bring reform to Congress. Congress is ineffective. Frankly, it's impotent. It's beholden to the executive election every 4 years. That's not the way it should be. It is the first branch of government. We look to lead the charge with dignity and empathy for a new Congress. That's where the voting delegate can be that person. And then obviously we are going to fight for things in the District of Columbia that we need. In the last go around in the stimulus package, we got shafted.
You're almost at
We would have been shafted if we had been more proactive. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Stracuzzi, what is the job of the DC delegate to Congress?
Well, first of all, I'd like to start out by saying that Ms. Norton has worked on statehood, but she removed it from the Democratic platform. And by doing so, it made our struggle more difficult. It is the people that go there, like Free DC and other organizations, to go lobby the other congressmen and senators to give us that point, to introduce that bill, to bring us where we're at. Now, the job of the delegate is to basically to work on the District of Columbia issues, land works, to make sure that we get the proper funding when those federal dollars are available, and to progress our movement on the Hill to become the 51st state. Now, if I was elected, the main goal I would do in the first 100 days is put together a team so that we can lobby the country and be able to do advertisements to let them know that we are residents of District of Columbia, and we should be part of our 51st state and inducted into our union like we voted on it, like every other territory did. Before they're inducted into the union, they voted on it and they were inducted into the union on equal footing. We need to push this matter to make it a big civil rights issue. And on top of that, to embarrass our country, because we are the last federalized state in the world, because Mexico City was a federalized city, but they were inducted and made part of Mexico as a whole. And those people have representation, but we do not. We preach democracy around the world, but we deny the citizens of the District of Columbia.
Very good. Greetings, Mr. Cheeks. I see you've joined us.
Yes.
The question that we're asking each candidate to go for 1 minute on, and you will have an opportunity to come back around for a rebuttal or a restatement. We're all familiar with Delegate Holmes Norton and the primary things for which she's known: constituent services, advocating for statehood, et cetera. What is the job of the delegate to you? What does it do? What does the delegate do, and what do you envision doing with the job?
What I would do with the delegate's job or position that I'm elected to do would be first and foremost to represent the injured people of the District of Columbia first, and also to demand equal rights, to demand payments for the injury of slavery in the North American borders. And also, secondly, is to create affordable and approvable housing. And also, one more, 3 parts here, to get rid of public housing and create what's called community housing, to where occupants will then be escorted into ownership that reside in those locations. As you know, we have a big gentrification question. As you know, there's a big statehood question that's on the minds of everybody. I am against statehood. I am for a vote for budget autonomy. I'm against statehood for one reason: it increases taxes. Our tax dollars will be going into another bottomless pit. Before we start talking about decreasing taxes or reducing taxes, the first group of people that we must take care of here in the District of Columbia and throughout the United States. This is not just a local issue, it's a national issue. The delegate seat has to address local and national issues without stepping on the mayor's toes, I should say. My national issue is to issue checks for the injuries of the North American and the transatlantic slave system. And we have to push that first before anything is addressed, before statehood is addressed, before dog parks are addressed, before greenhouse emissions are addressed. We have to remember the ones who built this country for free and have not received 1 penny, but a lot of dysfunctional programs and a lot of, I should say, incumbents steering us in the wrong direction of a feel-good life. DC cannot afford to be a state. It cannot afford to be a state because we have no natural resources here. That's the first part. Then we're looking at what? Rewriting the Constitution. Now, are we all going to come together and rewrite the Constitution? That could be done. They can take us off the list of being classified as subjects.
Thank you, Mr. Cheeks. We're running over the allotted time. We have to be fair to the other candidates. It's going to be.
Can I give a rebuttal to that? Can I give a rebuttal?
Hold on.
Well, we're gonna finish.
Amir hasn't spoken yet.
Mr. Candidate Lowry, we haven't heard
Thank
from him
you.
yet on this question.
Yeah, can we clarify one thing before you restate the question? Because at the outset, I thought we established there would be rebuttals, or if we raised our hand,
Yes, there will.
if we raised our hand, that there would be a rebuttal. Now the conversation has gone through
Correct.
several different turns, and I don't think it's
We're gonna hear-
super relevant, and I don't want to take too much time. So can you just clarify, is a rebuttal now if I were to?
Right, I'll revisit the format. We're gonna allow each candidate to answer the question, and then we're gonna return to each candidate to give them an extra minute to respond to anything that they've heard,
Okay,
rebut, oppose, add to. So you'll get 1 minute each for the question, and then another minute after everybody has gone.
okay.
All right. So
Just one
candidate, yep, sure. Candidate Lowry, what is your job on day one as the district's representative delegate to the House of Representatives?
Right. So I think first and foremost, I appreciate everybody's answers. I would question everybody's endeavors and how much you've actually spoken with DC residents of all ages and races, your voting constituents, and determine what they feel your day-to-day operations need to be. I've done that. I've heard from the people of DC. I would make statehood a top priority as it needs to be. Equal rights and equal representation is a clear starting point for us achieving our goals. And beyond that, the day-to-day operation, which is solution-oriented, and the real solution is getting into the community, establishing relationships with community leaders, determining what are the services that need to be provided. What are the communities that most need those services? I think what's been presented generally and by the other candidates, quite frankly, are just broad blanket solutions. And I'm presenting myself as a candidate who day to day will get to know his constituents, right? I'll be out there in the community and on the ground. And then that kind of work really brings the solutions that we need. Vocational schools, I would say, are a big part of a solution that will build the community. And it's a clear directed goal that is easily attainable.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go back around and give everybody a minute to respond to anything we've heard. I see candidate Krukoff's hand. Do you have anything further to add to the discussion here?
Well, I would like to say two things. One, retrocession is statehood. There are two forms of statehood. We can be our own state, or we can be part of another state. What is not discussed around the country, and specifically in DC and Maryland, is how full statehood would affect our costs in terms of Medicaid, in terms of our court system, in terms of the college and education system. And basically, we are looking at, when we become a state, losing approximately $2 billion in these items that need to be superseded by cooperation. We can do that if we work with Maryland. We will have senators, so let's do that. And also, the second point I wanted to make is that I have been out there. I've spoken at every single ANC in town. I've been active at this for years, and I look to bring that energy to the delegate position on a day-to-day basis, as well as having a more global philosophy going forward for the country and for us specifically in the district.
Delegate Musa, or excuse me, Candidate Musa.
Not yet.
A little bit premature there. Candidate Musa, do you have an additional statement regarding the job of the delegate to Congress?
Yeah, I just wanted to go over a couple of other points that I didn't hit before, that are part of our program that we're proposing for working people to organize around. As I said before, our campaign is not vote for me and I'll solve the problem. perspective is that there needs to be a mass movement of working people to change society. That's the only thing that has changed. Now, what's real is that there are really two classes of people in the United States, as well as the District of Columbia. There are those of us who work every day or try to, and there are those who control all of the resources of the country as well, the capitalists. We have nothing in common with the capitalists as working people. Tens and tens of millions of us are unemployed. For example, here in DC, they closed down hospitals. Instead of putting unemployed workers to work to build new hospitals, they closed down schools instead of putting people to work to build new schools. Those are the things that we think can be fought around and opened up. Let me just raise one other thing. One of the candidates, this will just take 10 seconds. One of the candidates spoke in Spanish to our friends and neighbors who speak Spanish. We called for amnesty for all of those who have no legal papers in the United States.
Amnesty
position.
for
That's our
undocumented immigrants. Very good.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Mr. Stracuzzi, what is the job of the delegate in your view?
Well, I've already spoke to that, man. I was rebutting to what Mr. Cheek said, which we are friends, but the District of Columbia pays the highest federal tax in the country. And based on that fact, it wouldn't cost us more tax money. We would break the city down into counties, and that would give them more money by breaking it down into counties based on funds that they get from the federal government through grants. And on top of that, I look at the district, it's no different than my parents' country, Italy. Rome is the capital of Italy. You have the Vatican, which is its own sovereign nation in the heart of Italy. So everything outside of our federal enclave is the District of Columbia. Inside the federal enclave is the District of Columbia, our seat of government. Everything outside of that is Washington, D.C., our 51st state. And that was my rebuttal to his.
Very good.
Very
good.
I'd like to
Hey,
speak
Chief,
on that
do you
issue.
care to respond? 60 seconds.
Yes, I do. Everybody that you've interviewed is off. They're way off. We cannot afford to be a state. Where are we going to get our natural resources from? Parking tickets? One could say we generate enough money in parking tickets to constantly go after innocent people. Non-calibrated moving cameras, non-calibrated parking meters. I mean, what's next? Statehood makes no sense for the people of the District of Columbia. We cannot afford to be a state. Delegate Holmes Norton pushed that issue because she's been doing that for the lifelong 31 plus years of her career. It does not make sense. It does not make financial sense. It does not make fiscal taxpayer sense, and so on and so on. We are receiving more money from the federal government than any other state in this union, and we are a territory. Let's pay the people who built this city for free first, the descendants of enslaved Americans. We should come first on the platform. We've got legalization of same-sex marriage. We've got legalization of marijuana. We've got legalization of bicycle lanes. We've got legalization of now psychedelic mushrooms. Where does that benefit the Black American descendants of slaves community in this city and the country, by the way?
Okay.
See, because your libertarian guy got it confused. He needs to run for mayor.
Okay.
This isn't a seat for the mayor. We're not here on the grounds with the people. We're here to push the injuries that has caused people.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chief. I have to interrupt. We've limited 1 minute, and I think we've gone over here. Mr. Lowry, do you have a rebuttal to any of these statements?
Yes, I sure do.
1 minute, please.
So I'll tie a bow on everything here. The day-to-day relationship of that office, it clearly needs to be redefined, and it needs to be somebody creative and innovative and forward-thinking, right? I think we saw with the CARES Act, Congresswoman Norton's failure to build relationships with her colleagues in the House and the broader Senate. And that's why we missed out on those funds. So day to day, you need to build relationships, not at that high, just that high level, but also on down the line, right? Through the mayor, through the city council. So there's some synergy, people working together towards similar means with community organizations. And that position is a leadership position that should connect some of those dots. We need to take matters into our own hands to generate solutions instead of waiting for other people, which we've done for 30 plus years, waiting for somebody to give us statehood or waiting for somebody to give us more rights or more control of our destiny. So doing that starts with looking within. The day-to-day work starts with looking within. And that's what I put forward to really move DC in the direction that it needs to go. I would just tie a knot on a bow on everything by saying,
Yep.
Very few people on this forum has mentioned education and youth development. I have a background, I run a 501c3 here in DC called Open Goal Project. I would encourage everyone to check that out and the work that we do.
I'm pretty sure we're over time.
Sorry, and
No,
the affordable housing.
Thank you very much.
And these issues have not been covered by anybody else. We
We're
need
gonna
community-driven solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lowry. I'm going to hand it over to my co-moderator, Lisa Rice, for the second question.
Okay, great. And I'd love it if you'd answer the question, because I didn't hear many people answering Jeffrey's question. I heard a lot of good stuff, but it wasn't answering his question. So my question is about legislative priority. If elected, what would be your first legislative priority? Mr. Cheeks, you have 60 seconds.
I can make it very simple. Thank you. My first legislative priority would be to initiate the payment of checks to descendants of enslaved Americans for the injury of slavery in this city and in this country. But first, we'll start in the district. You see, my committee's already started. We've already completed the bill, and we have the payout schedule. We know what the district is owed, the people of the district. We know what they are owed. That's roughly $2.8 trillion. That's what the descendants of enslaved Americans are owed as a whole in the District of Columbia. $78 trillion throughout the 34 states and 3 territories that we have inside of the country. Once we get ours first, the rest of the nation will then follow suit. To me, that's all that matters. 401 years working for free and experiencing high levels of poverty and experiencing high levels of discrimination, high levels of being prejudiced against, no matter who you are, how tall, how short, how strong, male or female, it goes across the board for descendants of Afro-Americans.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Krukoff, what would be your first legislative priority if elected?
First legislative priority would be to introduce a bill for the creation of Douglas County, Maryland, so that we would unify and we would have statehood through the state of Maryland. I would work with Jamie Raskin in the House to do that. I would work with Republicans in the House to do that. I would, of course, work with the senators and with the president to finish the job that we have been desirous of accomplishing for years, which is statehood. And this is the way forward economically, historically, and for students. Also, I would work on political reform in general, which has to do with things like term limits for Congress and things like multi-member districts, diminishment of dark money, and other ways to have the system work better.
Okay, thank you. I think we lost someone. Did we lose someone? Mr. Stracuzzi, I don't see him anymore. Okay, I was gonna call on him, but Mr. Musa, what would be your first legislative priority if elected?
Well, as I said before, the idea is not to vote for me and I'll solve your problem. The first thing I would do would be to call upon use that office to help organize the labor movement and working people in this city to demand jobs and decent wages. That's what we need, and that's what we should organize to do. That would be the first thing, but that's all connected. Education, housing, medical care, they're all connected for working people. It's not something that there's one of these and one of those. The other thing we would do, for example, is to provide free medical care for all of those who need it. The rich people in this country don't need to have Medicaid or anything like that, but regular working people like some of us on this program do need it, and that's what we would propose. That would be free medical care for all in the District of Columbia, as well as jobs for all at decent wages, and the building of housing and things that we need. Those are addressed to the problems that working people confront here in the United States. The last thing I worry about is what rich people will think.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lowry, what would be your first legislative priority if elected?
Right, very simple. Equal rights and equal representation has to be the first legislative priority, regardless of statehood or not. We need a vote on the House floor. We need votes in the Senate. In any order, we need representation. Quite frankly, it's sad that it's been posed to us by Delegate Noren as historic that 30 years from her first term in office, that she's been able to get a House vote on statehood. I think that, quite frankly, it's insufficient. It's taken way too long for us to progress the ball forward. We need somebody who's going to aggressively build relationships and coalitions within the House, aggressively garner support by helping other people achieve, similar legislation or similar policy in other places, and then bring that support back to DC. That's the only way we can really generate leverage in the House and amongst, our friends across the country. Somebody has to be willing to do that work, and that's what will get us to equal rights and equal representation, whether that's statehood or not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stracuzzi, I don't see you. Are you there? Oh, there he is. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Oh. We've lost one already. Did anyone have anything else to say, any rebuttal to that, or can we move on to question? Whoop.
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
I have one. I need to just add 10 or 20 seconds. The Recovery Act bill, as you know, everyone's talking about reparations and how it's going to hit the taxpayers. Reparations will hit the taxpayers, but we're not asking for reparations. We're asking for compensation and benefits that we have not received as an injured populace of people here in the District of Columbia, as well as the United States. Now, who is going to pay? Well, Mr. Stracuzzi mentioned the Vatican. The Vatican owes approximately, I'd say, about $38 trillion for the injury of slavery. The Vatican, along with certain African governments and nations, they owe certain industries here in America. They will be responsible for paying all of the relief money that's due to the children of enslaved Americans here in the district, as well as the nation. And we know that they have the money. And it's no guess, it's no wonder. We are ready to get this in motion, forget statehood. It's going to cost the taxpayers too much money, and it's going to isolate the children of enslaved Americans out of this city.
Okay.
Legally.
I see Mr. Krukoff, and then we'll go to Mr. Musa.
So Mr. Stracuzzi is not here, so I'm going to defend him. He didn't talk about the Vatican in regards to its slavery. He talked about the Vatican because that is a federal district within Rome. He was talking about geography, and the geography of Douglas County, Maryland, or Douglas Commonwealth with the 51st state, that's identical. The monumental core where no one lives will remain the District of Columbia. We will either be Douglas County, Maryland, or Douglas Commonwealth.
Hello?
we believe in our campaign that Douglas County, Maryland was something that we can make us happen with affordability and with historical precedent.
Well, I understand what you're saying, David.
Can you guys hear me?
Mr. Cheeks, I think Mr. Stracuzzi is back. Are you there?
Yes.
Excellent. The question was, if elected, what would be your first legislative priority? Oh. I can't hear you if you're talking. Can anyone hear him?
No.
Yeah.
No. Okay, Mr. Musa, you have 60 seconds for rebuttal and then we move on to, yeah, go ahead, 60 seconds, go.
Thank you very much. I wanted to just tell people how they can contact the Socialist Workers Campaign before we get carried away here. We have a headquarters here in Washington, D.C. As I mentioned, we're a workers' party. Our program is directed toward working people. Our phone number is 202-536-5080. We have a newspaper that I showed at the beginning called The Militant, and you can read The Militant at themilitant.com. I urge everyone else to do that. And I think it's very important to point out one or two other things in the next 30 seconds. One is that one of the biggest things that's happened in the last 6 months, other than the COVID-19, has been the fight against police brutality and the killing. Nobody has has responded to that, and I will. What we call for, we don't think the police can be defunded. We see them as the first line of defense for the rich in this country, and that what we need to do is organize a government of working people, a government of workers and farmers that will abolish the police and all repressive apparatus like that. That's one of the things that we think is very important, and it appeals to many working people in the city of Washington, D.C. and around the country. So that is one of the things I think we should do. That really is the elephant in the room. That is the fight against police brutality. We're not for violence. We're not for breaking windows. We're not for stoning. We're not for fighting with the police. We're for building a mass movement of working people, and the unions have a role to play in that, to help advance the interests of working people against the kind of brutality and killings. You could have blacks, by and large, but not only black, shot down by the police, as happened with Guyana, and nothing happens. But those demonstrations are very important because they keep the heat on the police, and we want them put in jail and prosecuted to the full extent of the law, whether they're in Louisville or whether they're in Washington, D.C. That's a big issue that confronts working people around the country.
Okay, all right. Mr. Lowry, did you want to?
Certainly.
Or we could go on to question 3.
No, I will certainly take my time here. Thank you, though. I just want to get back to the core of the question, which was, what would your legislative priority be? And, you know, I think we've heard everybody hopping around the map and again posing, you know, just blanket solutions or perhaps things that they've said in past years as they've been on the ballot. But clearly we need new ideas and fresh perspectives if we're looking at anything and hoping to make real progress. I want to say on the statehood front and really addressing that issue, I've heard from people that think that statehood is a pipe dream, that don't believe that statehood is attainable. And somebody who's in that position needs to be able to convince DC and convince our constituents that yes, that is attainable before we even cross that line. So we have a lot of work to do. It's going to require a lot more work than I think anybody else on this forum is willing to do, quite frankly, from their statements and what we've seen. But I'm presenting myself as a candidate who's willing to go the extra mile. And that's why I should be the next congressman for the District of Columbia. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jeff?
Okay, I'm going to remind everyone to try to limit your answer to 60 seconds. We may have to interrupt you if it's going over. I sense that everybody, the elephant in the room is statehood. This is a subject that everyone is interested in hearing about, talking about. But we have at least one candidate here tonight who is a strong advocate for retrocession. I know that there's some statehood advocates that feel as if that is possibly getting in the way of statehood. So I would like to hear from you, Mr. Krukoff, to make the case for retrocession, and then move on to the others to see what their views are on statehood versus retrocession.
Okay, so first off, retrocession is statehood. If you live in Arlington, Virginia, you're part of the state. You have statehood. So that is, retrocession is statehood. Douglas County, Maryland is statehood. That's number one. Number two, we are looking at increased costs. Right now, we're going broke. Right now, I'm on a 15,000 square foot floor plate, downtown DC. There's no one here during the day, except for like 5 people. It's one person for every 3,000 square feet. We are having trouble, folks. We need to not increase our costs, but to have economies of scale. Working with Maryland is a path forward that has historical precedent. 1846 to 1847, the Arlington portion or the Alexandria portion at the time fell back, and it became, which is now Arlington County, Virginia. So it's got historical precedent. It's better for students because we've become part of the University of Maryland education system, for the University of Maryland and for the college education system throughout the state. It's also, it's economies of scale are there, and politically it's advantageous. This is a national issue. This is not just the District of Columbia issue. We have to work with our colleagues in the Senate, in the House. We have to build for the whole country. And 51st statehood does not poll well around the country. It's a non-starter in the Senate. Now we have a chance of being the 51st state in the next 2 years. It's possible. But if it doesn't happen, we are here to move the ball forward and to finish the job. And that's what retrocession does. We could have done this a long time ago, and we have not, and we should do this now.
Okay.
May I?
Mr. Cheeks, I see you're raising your hand. What is your view on statehood versus retrocession?
Well, retrocession will cost the state of Maryland more money for the injury of slavery to the descendants of enslaved Americans who are Black, who currently reside here in the district and in the state of Maryland. David should be aware that the state of Maryland owes 363 years of benefits and I should say protection of this bill. Add that with the district of 253 years. Does the state of Maryland want to surpass the Commonwealth of Virginia in owing the most amount of years of protection over this new law that you see that's going on right now? It's something to think about. Statehood is not on the meter or the minds of the entire population of this city. I know most people would rather have $500,000 to $1.8 million in their hands, other than giving out $500,000 or $1.8 million. I know that for a fact. And I know lots of people would embrace the idea of a check coming to them for their ancestors, working for free, getting raped, building state buildings, building federal buildings, building streets, creating a water system in the city.
Okay.
Think about that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Musa, response on the issue of statehood versus retrocession.
Well, I stated our position in the Socialist Workers Party before on statehood, that we favor statehood, and we see that as a part of the problem that confronts working people. We think everybody in the District of Columbia deserves the rights of everybody else in the United States, period, in terms of representation. But the real question is what I showed everyone, the headlines of our newspaper. That is, we are for jobs, and working people have to organize for that. It doesn't matter if the DC is a state. There's tens and tens of millions of people that live across the United States that are unemployed who live in states. What we say is that you need to have a program that actually provides jobs. We call for a government of workers and farmers, not a government of the rich, not a government of the corporate entities. That's what's confronting working people, not the side issues of who am I and what am I going to do and all of that. We need to have a mass movement to change things. That's how things change. They've done it in Cuba, where there's free medical care for everybody, free education for everybody. And the United States has not for 60 years taken its foot off the necks of the people of Cuba. We demand that the United States cease.
Thank you, Mr. Musa.
Attack
Mr.
on
Lowry, would you like to
Thank
take a minute to talk about the subject at hand?
I'm going to take all my time and then more, given everybody else going over. So I'm going to just squash this whole conversation about retrocession. I think if you're a candidate serious about this office and you're serious about your platform and it's retrocession, then you haven't spoken with a lot of DC voters, because there simply isn't support for DC to become a part of Maryland. If you posture or you say you're a third generation DC native, or you've been here 3 generations, then you should know yourself the pride that we have in that flag behind me, right? And that we're not going to become a part of Maryland. So I just want to, make sure that that's clearly stated. Nobody that I've spoken with, and I've spoken with hundreds or thousands of people around this issue, has even, insinuated that that's on their mind as a solution. So beyond that, all these things that we're talking about, and statehood, I believe was referenced as not the top priority. And we talked about the top priority for legislation. It's not the top priority for me either. And I think that has to be stated clearly. It's not a top priority for many Washingtonians.
Thank you.
I just want to say that clearly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Stracuzzi, are you still with us?
We lost him. He's gone.
Okay.
So it's time for our last question. And also, if you're watching on Zoom, please send, I don't see any questions on the chat. We have some coming in from Facebook Live. Okay, so this is the last prepared question. I guarantee you, none of you thought of this question.
You guys hear me?
I love it.
Wait, I can hear someone. Who do I hear?
He came back and then he left again.
Oh, all right. We're going to get to the last planned question. What is your superpower and how will you use it to help the residents of DC? Mr. Cheeks.
My superpower is the ability to bring opposing sides together without making one feel isolated from the other, or one feeling that they've given up too much and the other has gotten most. That's why I'm the National Executive Director of the U.S. Citizens Recovery Initiative Alliance. We are responsible for removing all of your Confederate statues around this country. We are responsible for bringing up the ideas of changing base names. That's all my work and my committee's work. We go the extra mile to correct the wrong and to get paid, to get our people paid, and to reduce taxes. See, once our people are paid, who's been injured, the entire populace of people will see a huge tax reduction. It's all in the money. It's all in the finance. We cannot no longer turn our heads away or gloss over the fact that we are injured victims walking in this city as well as this country. And it has to be addressed. And that's my superpower.
All right.
Getting to yes.
Mr. Lowry, and what would you do to help us?
I couldn't hear you clearly if you were asking me or not.
Yes. Okay, I'll ask it again. What is your superpower and how would you use that to benefit residents of the district?
Great. The most important thing for this position and my superpower is building positive and effective relationships. This is a position that has been in desperate need of somebody to work with community leaders, to actually listen to people, to have better constituent services, to quite frankly, just serve the residents of the District of Columbia better. My superpower in building relationships, again, would have brought us the CARES Act funding that we missed out on from Congresswoman Norton's failure to have the effective and adequate relationships to make sure that we had that necessary funding. And then going forward, you can't have anything else but a top to bottom approach to address the issues that we need to address. And that's, again, why I'm the best person for this job, and why I hope to be DC's next congressman. Thank you.
Mr. Musa, tell us about your superpower and what you would do.
Well, I have no superpower. I'm a regular working person. Like I've been saying before, it's not a question that I'm the greatest. Vote for me and I'll solve the problem. But what I really wanted to do is address the issues that confront working people. As you can see behind me, there are books. Those books are speeches by people like Malcolm X, Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, Nelson Mandela, fighters and leaders of the fight of working people around the world. That's part of what our responsibility in the Socialist Workers Party is, to make that available to working people to help us understand what has gone before, what exists now. Once upon a time, people said, you'll never get rid of slavery. Slavery is here to stay. And there was a Revolutionary War fought, and slavery was abolished. There was a little group of colonies that said the British got to get out. They fought the British and they won. What we say is working people in the United States can get rid of capitalism and replace it with a society based on human needs and solidarity and not profits. So I urge all of those who are listening to get a copy of our newspaper. That's why I show it. It's called The Militant. And you can follow our campaign from now on. We have a candidate for president, Allison Kennedy, a candidate for vice president, Malcolm Jarrett, and I'm the candidate in the District of Columbia for DC delegate.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Krukoff, superpower, come on now.
Now, I do not have a superpower. What I have is the ability to listen, the ability to interact with people, to build relationships. And I would like to correct Mr. Lowry. We're not going to become a member of, we're not going to become a congressman or a congresswoman. We're going to become the DC delegate. And if you elect me, we're going to fix that, and we will become a congressperson, because we will become a district within Maryland, and we will solve the problem. However, we have to work together. And my experience is in building bridges and in working with people like the National Association of Nonpartisan Reformers and what I hear when I listen to the community is that people want reform. The reforming 20s are here, and I'm here to work with you to create reform going forward.
Okay. If no one has, since only two of you say you have superpowers and the other two say you don't, I think
I'm a regular person, a regular worker.
maybe we can move on to Q&A from the audience. Jeff, do you want to?
Can I, is that open for a rebuttal? Or another?
Go ahead.
You know, I think I just want to reiterate que sí, yo soy bilingüe. Crecí aquí en Washington. Yo asistí a escuelas públicos aquí. I went to all DC public schools. And I want to just accentuate what I said about relationship building. And really hit home the point that I will speak with everybody in the District of Columbia, regardless of you know, age, race, you know, religion, anything. I will be looking to hear your opinions and ideas on what needs to change and move forward. And I look forward to, quite frankly, building those relationships.
Okay.
you.
All right. So we're going to move on to Q&A from the audience. And Jeff, are you taking the first one, or do you want me to take the first one?
Sure, I've got a question here from June. And again, I'll remind everyone, 1 minute, please, for the response. Question from June. How important is it for elected employees to promote the advancement of civics education in the schools and to role model compassionate governance methods as they serve the people? Mr. Krukoff?
Oh, that's a very important thing to do. Right now, we are losing that. So the first branch of government is Congress. The second branch of the Constitution, or the second Article 2, is the executive. Civics will tell us that Congress has frankly advocated its role. And if we need to understand civics, and by the way, we can have an amendment to the Constitution, not for us to have complete voting rights, but for us to have term limits. We have an amendment that so that the president can only serve 2 terms. Members of Congress should also serve less and not be sort of co-opted by the duopoly, the Republicans and the Democrats, into sort of a retrograde power structure that benefits no one but themselves. So yes, civics is very important.
Mr. Musa, how important is it for elected employees to promote the advancement of civics education in the schools?
I went to schools and 99.9% of what they tried to teach us had to be dispersed, getting rid of because of what really is the situation that we exist under today. They don't teach us about that there's a working class and there's a capitalist class. That's civics. They don't teach us that the capitalist class reaps all of the profit from our labor. They don't teach that in what's called civics class. So what is really happening is that we're getting a real civics class in the real world where working people are now being confronted with a deep and profound economic and social crisis. And that's what working people want to discuss and hear answers that we have to say.
Very good. Mr. Cheeks.
Well, I could sum that up real easy and quick. First of all, my idea of civics is what's called American history, combined with civics. We need to start teaching our younger student population the history of the formation of this country and slavery. We have a lot of our kids who attend high school, junior high, elementary, who know nothing how they arrived to this country and why there's such a strife between certain races or certain parties or certain individuals. I would mandate that. Here in the District of Columbia, we had a council member, Kenyon McDuffie, ordered that Afro-American history be taught in all District of Columbia schools. That he should go clear across the board into not only public schools, but private, charter, and any other school where a individual is attending, so they'll know exactly what happened. As you know, in the African American community, our biggest crisis that we are going through is more so our identity, knowing who we are. Now, I know my identity because I had the luxury and the backing to obtain a DNA. I am 65% African, Congo, Angola, and Botswana. I'm 20% European, Irish, British, and Scandinavian is the majority of my European blood, and the rest is Native American, Cherokee, and Apache. So knowing your identity helps a lot through this cause, and knowing good civics, not the watered down version that I received as a young boy coming up. I knew nothing about how my ancestors arrived to this country.
Very
it was
good.
all glossed over by the
Thank you,
Mayflower.
Cheeks. I'm going to have to open it up to Mr. Lowry. Tell us about the importance of civics and whether elected officials should be speaking out on that for its inclusion in our schools.
Yeah, you phrase it slightly differently. I'll answer the first because obviously, you know, our elected officials should certainly address the need for, you know, revamping how those subjects are presented. And furthermore, you know, ensuring that young people understand the processes that are, you know, so drastically going to affect their futures so that they can affect them the right way, or participate them in the right way, rather. You know, this question centers around education and youth development and the larger, you know, need for teaching true American history, and teaching the need for, I'll go back to fresh ideas, new perspectives, and the fact that we haven't yet ever gotten there, meaning civically and our government. We know that systemic racism is real and it exists at the core of our country. So we haven't yet gotten it right. We're still working towards that. That needs to be taught clearly. And, you know, as we move forward into this next phase of our country's history, we can't allow people that try to cover that history up or, you know, rewrite those history books, or try to tell us that things aren't the way that they actually were. It is with that knowledge of self that we can actually do things differently and make them once and for all better in this country.
Thank you.
Because it hasn't gotten there yet.
Thank you, Mr. Lai. We want to get to some other audience questions. Lisa, do you have a question from the audience?
I do. And this is for everyone. Since there's no way to get DC statehood approved constitutionally, is there any other way to get full representation without DC statehood? Mr. Musa, would you like to start us off?
Well, as I said, and I'll say it again.
Sure, I'll say it again. Since there's no way to get DC.
No, I didn't mean you to say it again.
Okay. We're having some fun tonight.
What we propose is that the citizens of the District of Columbia have full democratic rights like everybody else in every state in the United States. The form all of that will take, we'll see based on struggle that happens with working people. That's one way to do it, the constitutional way and so on. But if you could probably get a majority of people in DC to go out and vote for DC statehood, it still wouldn't achieve statehood because it is the rich and the government, the federal government, that controls the future of DC as long as we don't take it from them. Now, I want to just say one other thing. There is no public education in the United States today. What the young people are taught is that they're either criminals, potential criminals, or that they're too stupid to learn. And that what they do learn is of no use whatsoever in the real world. That's what most of us were taught, and that's what's still taught in the schools today. And the major things, somebody mentioned earlier, the thing about vocational education. They had that when I was in school, but it's gone because it's not in the interest of the rich to have that in the school system. That's why we need to revamp the whole system, and only working people can do it. Not the rich, not put a little Band-Aid here, a little Band-Aid there. None of that works for solving the problem of education. It's a serious thing, and the youth have absolutely nothing to say about what goes on in the classroom at all. The politicians now favor, and they argue, whether or not the public schools or the charter schools should be reopened. But nobody said anything about the safety of the children and the teachers that go into those schools. Shouldn't the parents and the teachers and the students have something to say about whether or not the place is safe or not? Shouldn't we take resources to make sure those places are safe for the education of young people?
Yeah.
That's the question that confronts working people today.
And we're at time on that. Okay, Mr. Krukoff, do you need me to repeat
No, I think that the question was, if I can repeat it, was that since statehood is not constitutional, what else should we do? Mm-hmm. And I would challenge that, with all due respect to the person who asked the question is incorrect. Statehood is constitutional. We've already had a retro session.
Sorry. I don't think that was a question.
Am I incorrect? Was that the question or not?
I've got to find it. Okay, here's the question. It's from Ira Strauss. Since there's no way to get DC statehood approved constitutionally,
Yes.
is there any other way to get full representation without DC statehood?
Okay, so with all due respect to Ira Strauss, who is someone I know, and I have much affection for, 51st statehood or retrocession is constitutional. The monumental core stays the District of Columbia. And regarding the 23rd Amendment, the word may is involved there. So Congress does not have to appoint those electors. However, you can get representation through a constitutional amendment. We've tried that. In 1978, we had an attempted constitutional amendment. It went to the states. We were supposed to get 3/4 of states, which is 36. It got 18. Okay, so we can create 51st statehood, or we can create Douglas County, Maryland. And if Ira or someone with standing wishes to sue the District of Columbia and the Congress and says that this is unconstitutional, bring it on. See you in court, because I suspect that that proceeding, that judicial proceeding, will fail. If it was regarding Douglas County, Maryland, it would get thrown out 9-0. We have 175 years of the Virginia retrocession existing. If it was 51st statehood, it might be 6-3, but I still believe that the Supreme Court would accept the 50 confines of the 51st state, and the monumental core being smaller, like Vatican City, as was mentioned earlier in this discussion. So thank you, Ira, for the question. Look forward to seeing you again soon. But that's our answer. Thank you.
Okay. Who didn't get to answer that question? There was
Right here.
All right, Mr. Lowry, and then we'll end with Mr. Cheeks.
How many times is Lowry going to speak?
How you're talking.
I just had to say that.
Can you repeat the question one more time, because it got manipulated once or twice?
From Ira Strauss. Since there's no way to get DC statehood approved constitutionally, is there any other way to get full representation without DC statehood?
Right. So the candidate Krukoff was correct in that that's not correct. That is not a correct statement. Sorry. It's possible. Statehood is possible. I want to make a commentary on, and equal representation is possible. I think in a construct that doesn't involve statehood, you've seen the president rewriting the rules for a lot of things, and threatening to rewrite a lot of rules. I do think that, and to follow that up, he has said expressly that he's not going to pass any bill that involves statehood that comes across his desk, or sign any bill. So I think we have to be very realistic about the potential for him being in office for 4 more years. We have to be very realistic of what our key goals are outside of statehood during that time window. I've said clearly why I'm the best candidate for that, and I have the solutions for either or. And I do want to say that very few people have considered that as a reality, but we're facing that in 3 weeks, that the president could get reelected. And then we have to move statehood to the back burner legitimately, because we do need stars to align to make sure that happens with the Congress, the Senate, and the president. So it is possible in some way, shape, or form. I think we have to be realistic about our chances and approach it measured, thinking about what's best for the people of DC.
Okay, Mr. Cheeks?
I'll make it short, as brief as I can. Statehood has a financial implication for the taxpayers of this territory. That's one thing everybody's overlooking. It's a feel-good measure to rally people to think that we're going to get something that we're not. We will get paid restitution for the injury of slavery long before we get paid, before we are allowed to be a state. And that goes to David Krukoff, Eleanor Holmes Norton, or anyone else in this city who's in doubt right now. It is alive, it's well, the bank accounts are set up, the committee is ready to go. We have a payout organization ready to pay the descendants of enslaved Americans their long and overdue money. Statehood will extract money from the people. It will isolate people. You'll then have to create a transportation system to where you would charge every car coming into the District of Columbia $200 each way. Can you imagine that? And can you imagine your living wage pay schedule? We would have to pay a minimum wage worker, I'd say about $150 an hour, because of the cost and the value-added tax system that goes into our tax system for housing or whole party tax system would then have to be increased. So this statehood stuff, it was a great idea 30 years ago. I voted for the Honorable Eleanor Holmes Norton 30 years ago as a young man, me and my entire family in Ward 6. Right now, times have changed. The market has changed. The ideas have changed. And a lot of people are seeking their checks from the injury of slavery. And that's where the two collide. Do you want to pay your $1.5 million to a territory that you don't own, or do you want to receive it?
We're at time, sir.
Thank you.
We are going to take one more question, and we're going to be very strict about the time because then we're going to move to closing statements. And since we're streaming live at the DC Civil Discourse Facebook page, I'm going to take a question from Karen at Free DC Now. And this is a question for all candidates. Do you think that acts of civil disobedience advance the cause for DC statehood? Why or why not? Mr. Lowry, go ahead.
Sure.
30 seconds.
It would depend on what kind of civil disobedience people would be willing to consider and engage in. I do think that there have been, a variety of theories that have been floated. I think over the past 15, 20 odd years, one of them being, not paying taxes or putting our money in an escrow so that the money is held in hopes of leveraging that against getting that legislation.
Okay.
So I think if people were willing to engage in it, I think it's reasonable. But that's a heavy lift to convince everybody and to convince the common person.
Thank you. Mr. Krukoff, 30 seconds.
I'm all for civil rallies about advocacy, but the answer is essentially no. I'm not sure exactly how you phrase the action, but that kind of thing is not going to create a groundswell around the country for us to be fully enfranchised in the District of Columbia. We have to build this from where we are now through the creation of Douglas County, Maryland, by working with Republicans, Democrats, independents, and through a reform-based philosophy. And then we will engender goodwill enough to pass a bill that will create Douglas County, Maryland.
Okay, Mr. Musa, on the subject of civil disobedience, does it advance our cause for statehood?
What we advocate in the Socialist Workers Party is mass discipline, political action. We don't tell people to engage in civil disobedience or not. That's a judgment individuals make, and nobody else should make it for them. But most people will participate in mass legal actions as we did during the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War movement, and so on. That's what we advocate, and that's what we think working people will do. As
Excellent.
opposed to having fights or anything with the cops or so-called putting your body on the line. We
Excellent.
think that's not in the interest of working people.
Mr. Cheeks, the last word, 30 seconds.
Well, it's nothing wrong with expressing yourself through being vocal. I spoke to the demonstrators at the White House in Lafayette Park and gave them the history and applauding them for turning a big page. The DC statehood agenda, I do believe, was not a part of the page. It's okay for some to attach themselves to it, but that page was about, I should say, public humiliation, anti-civil rights for Black Americans who are descendants of slaves, and of course, police excessive abuse, which I am not in favor of defunding the police. I'm in favor of reforming the police, such as the first part we need to change is the name of the U.S. Marshals, named after John Marshall. His name should not be on any federal courthouse because of his ideas and philosophies about Black Americans. And I will see to that in my administration that every name throughout the district, as well as the country, has his name stricken and removed, as well as renaming the U.S. Marshals to the U.S. Justice.
Right. I believe we're ready to start closing statements. Correct? Everyone will have 1 minute, and guess what? I found my timer, so. You're in trouble.
Oh, throw it away, Lisa, throw it away.
Nope, I am not throwing it away. Mr. Musa, get us started. 60 seconds, closing statement, it's all yours.
Okay, the Socialist Workers Party's office is at 7603 Georgia Avenue in Washington, D.C. We urge all of you to come by, Suite 300. Our phone number is what the number I gave you before, 202-536-5080. And I urge all of you to read our newspaper, The Militant. Here it is, right here. There, I was within your time.
You absolutely, you've got 30 more seconds if you want to go.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. What I said before was that we urge working people to organize ourselves in the workplace for a union to fight in our interests, as well as a labor party that represents both internationally and locally the interests of working people. And finally, I would like to thank Jeffrey and Lisa and the DC Debate Administrator for doing such a great job.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. Woo! And that was a minute exactly. All right. Mr. Cheeks, you've got your 60 seconds.
Oh, so I'm on deck. Okay, well, I hope to knock this out of the park here. My primary objective as your new elected official for this DC delegate seat is solely to cure the injury. That's the only injury that matters in this entire country and also this entire city, along with it being a federal territory. My interest is purely to reduce poverty or end poverty and reduce taxes as a whole. Something that we all can identify with. Statehood will increase the tax responsibility of all of us in this city, no matter what color we are. The U.S. Adjustment and Recovery Act is my baby. And yes, I will push it all the way to the top where it belongs, so that the injured victims of this North American slavery system can finally get their just due, no matter where they live in this country or where they live in this city. And I must add, I'm finished?
You are.
Okay, well, I'll accept that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lowry, wait a minute, let me restart the time. Are you ready? Mr. Lowry?
Was born ready.
You're born ready. All right, go.
So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Here in Washington, D.C., we've done that for 30 years. This year, now more importantly than ever, we need to look elsewhere. With respect to the other candidates on this forum, I think they've been on the ballot before. I'm presenting myself as somebody totally new and fresh, that's really going to do the work that DC needs. I would encourage all the voters that watch this and see this to be accountable. It's not enough to just vote. You need to do your research. You need to involve yourself in community organizations. And that's how we really affect change at the end of the day. Congresswoman Norton, if elected, will be 85 years old. That's another key point. And it's critical now more than ever that we move away from her and her style of leadership.
That's your
I'm
minute.
almost done.
That's your minute.
To ensure
That's a
that
minute.
we have positive outcomes
Somebody mute that
for
mic.
the District of Columbia. Everyone went over, Susan.
Somebody mute that mic. Hey,
Everyone went over.
in real time on this one. Mr. Krukoff, 1 minute, you ready?
Yes.
I'm trying, go.
Okay, thank you very much for you and for Jeffrey for moderating. Thank you for Mr. Cheeks, Mr. Lowry, Mr. Musa, and earlier Mr. Tracuzzi for being part of this forum with all of us. No thank you to Congressman Norton. I will correct Mr. Lowry, she's 83, so she's only 2 years younger than what he said. But it's time for positive change. It's time that we work together. It's time for political reform. We have the way to work forward. I look forward to building a relationship with you. My name is David Krukoff. I'm number 8, last on the ballot, but I'm first in the hearts and minds of the citizens and residents of Washington, D.C. And let's fix this together.
Okay, I think we are out of time. I want to thank my co-moderator, Lisa Rice. I'd like to thank organizer Ann Wilcox, our producer, Sarah Ross, and the candidates, Omari Musa, Amir Lowry, in abstention, Natalie Stracuzzi, John Cheeks, and Mr. David Krukoff. Thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing your message out there.
Thanks, everyone.
Let's win. Let's win.